Welcome back to Facing the Crowd. We are chatting with Gugu Nkabinde. She's the CEO and founder of Gugu Intimates. Gugu, let's take a look at your childhood. I mean, growing up, what was life like for you?
I tend to have a bit of an internal view of what life was growing up, but I've been going through a personal journey while building this brand where I've had to kind of try and understand myself. And I realized that the blessing in being born first and foremost to my dad, who is South African, who was in exile in Zimbabwe and met my mother.
Yes.
And then they had me, which meant I had the best of more than two worlds because my family was spread out around Zimbabwe, Zambia, and Botswana as well. And I traveled that a lot as a child. And as a result, I became quite a multilingual child and a very curious child. I was the family's entertainer, you know, with the pen, singing the jingles to the ad. I always thought I'd be an actress, but I was also very much afraid of seeing my face. I barely watch my own interviews, by the way. Like, I struggle to rewatch any of my interviews. So clearly, I chose the right path behind the camera and thinking about the work and the message. Yeah. I am the youngest of seven siblings, of seven children. Sorry. Two of my siblings are late. I've lost two brothers. My childhood was such that I was always allowed to develop my talents, develop my skills. I was the acting kid, the one in the sports team, playing tennis. And the blessing and the curse in that is I was good at most things I tried. So it took me a while, well, not a while, it was about 13 when I remember circling around a University of the Western Cape at the Times prospectus and deciding that a communications degree was what I wanted to do. And that's when my stepbrother, I also have two step siblings, so my stepbrother was going to study film and I found his prospectus and I identified what I wanted. So I started going for it from there. Public speaking, trying to be in a space where I can develop my ability to communicate, so writing, speaking, acting, and all of that stuff. So my childhood was quite colorful, and compared to a lot of the people I grew up around, I can say that I traveled more, and it wasn't far. It was because I would have to travel to South Africa. I preferred the schooling system in Zim. So I was back and forth quite a bit. And it kind of made me into the kind of person I am, an empath. I'm always thinking about what other people will think and feel. And that makes me the strategist I am that's always trying to solve problems for other people.
Growing up, who were some of your biggest influences to date?
My mother was a huge influence to me. Even when I was a troublesome teenager who decided we all hate our mothers, like, I hate you, you're ruining my life. But my mother was an entrepreneur from when I was born. And I hated it at the time because for me, I would look at other kids whose moms and dads were front and center whenever they were doing stuff. And there was my mother trying new things all the time, which meant sometimes she got home at 11 p.m. So I took it on myself to always write her notes to update her. And without the understanding, I made this one promise to myself that I'll never be an entrepreneur. I want my life.
Never say never.
And never say never, because in hindsight, and the sad part of not being able to talk to her and tell her that I get it now, was she found multiple things she cared about. So she was a huge influence on me because she tried, and where she failed, she would pick up on something new where I'd think, oh great, now she's gonna go to a 9-to-5 and I can see her like normal people. There'd be a touring company idea that she had. There would be there's no internet in campsites. Now she's doing that. And then into my teenagehood, my other influence was my stepmom. So my dad was remarried and my stepmom was a politician. She became quite like the hero in my life. I mean, it was post-94, and in the reintegration into the new South Africa, she was in parliament. So I would look at this woman and we would get to watch her. We remember the Parliament channel opened up on SABC3, I think it was. I would watch this woman command her own and, you know, stand for what she believes in and spend, even though some of her nights ended up at 12 with Parliament caucuses, she still found time to go into the communities and, you know, adopt schools and work with underprivileged people, which is something she now does full-time in her retirement. And it inspired me as well to see up close a balanced woman, because another thing I realized scared me about entrepreneurship was I felt that you had to give a lot of things up, and there she was being the most present mom and wife that I have insight into. She would rock up straight from the airport, from chairing Parliament to kicking off her heels and running to the kitchen to make sure that my dad and all of us have eaten. And she gave me a different perspective of, that's the life I want. I know I can have it all and I want to have it all. So I've had a strong women influence. I have amazing friends. I have a circle of women I call my tribe who have come and gone. Some we grow apart over times, but we always come back to each other because we understand the nature of life. And I'm just blessed to always have them gravitate towards me when I need them to learn a particular lesson, whether it's nice or not. It's not always pretty days, but my influences are quite broad and predominantly female. My dad is a huge influence in my life as well, as a present parent who tries. You know, he's not perfect, but he always tries.
We spoke to a few people who know you in your personal space, and this is what they had to say about you.
Hi, my name is Nkabinde and I am friends with Gugu Nkabinde of Gugu Intimates. Gugu and I have worked around the same industry. I've always run my business since like 2009. I had a DJing school before, and when I started working with corporates, a lot of people would meet me, would ask me if I know her, because they were like, number one, there's a resemblance. Number two, you guys have the same mind. You know, you guys really think the same, which I think was more about the strategic thinking. And I always, every time I would sit with someone and we're exploring something, they'd be like, do you know Gugu? And I'm like, I don't. I've heard about this girl so many times. And then finally, I think last year, I reached out to her because there was like, I took a trip to Cape Town and I met we had a mutual friend, and I was sitting with her and she said, have you met Gugu? And I'm like, okay, now I really have to meet her. It's amazing how she can get people together to champion a vision, right? Because a lot of the Gugu Intimates brand and how it's come together, it really involves a lot of support from a lot of different people. And I just have watched her garner the support, get people to really become ambassadors for the brand. Other than that, it's an amazing concept. She's really done a great job at really articulating the needs of brown-colored girls. You know, she's hilarious. I don't know if people know this, but she can just go on. I had dinner with her yesterday and I was finished. I can't really talk about what we were talking about, but she knows, and she absolutely is so hysterical. And I think another thing I really appreciate is just the ability to talk through certain things and get different perspectives. You know, she's a little different from me, a little different from some of my other friends. I appreciate diversity in the people that I engage, and she brings a lot of that, I think, for me and just in my life generally. I wish her wealth, lots of money, lots and lots of money. I wish her happiness. I wish her all the things I think I could wish for myself and anyone that I love and appreciate. She works hard, she cares deeply, and I really, really appreciate that about her.
Along the journey, I mean, you faced many challenges, both personal and within the entrepreneurial space. What are some of those challenges or barriers to entry that you've managed to overcome?
I say this because I do think that there are a lot of people who are sitting with notebooks scribbled with ideas, and I can resonate with the fact that the first and biggest one is who do you think you are to do this? You're not special, this can't be real. That is a huge one, because until you overcome the limitations in your mind, you cannot boldly go for something. And one of the biggest realizations I had sitting at my launch, as I was about to have a conversation with a personal friend who was going to kind of do an interview style conversation with me, was until I believed my story myself, nobody else did. So that takes me to the next challenge, which was in finding the right support and funding.
Yes.
It was the internal problem that I feel contributed somewhat to the external problem of finding the right backers and the right funding. Was, to some extent, I wasn't sure I was capable. To some extent, I wasn't sure that I had what it takes. But in the same space, I do think there's a real and urgent need for a relook at the model in how we fund entrepreneurs. So I always walked away from presentations about my business feeling, I just don't feel they get it, because it is not traditional. It is not a new consumer product that people will eat, that people will put on their faces, or etc. So because it's not yet tangible and it is an abstract idea, I would walk away feeling like I don't think either A, I didn't do enough work to show them what it is that I'm talking about, but also the funding structures in the way they are have been primarily geared towards give me proof and then I'll support you. But sometimes I need you to see it and take the risk with me. Of course, there must be some things in place that make sure that you recoup the investment into the idea. So I was turned away by all the funding houses that I had been referred to up until a point in March where I was just like, I need to go rogue and find a way to get the consumer to press the need so that people see it. So we launched our website, we launched our social media platforms while the product was still sitting with my supplier and I owed them the balance of production costs, right? And just in looking at 2,000 website visits a week was something I could now take and say, you see, when they hear about it, they click through, they want to know more, and they are subscribing and telling us their sizes and telling us what shade they think they are, even before we help them navigate it.
In the same breath, I mean, what are those pearls of wisdom you've picked up along the way that you'd like to impart to all those watching who want to enter into your space or even just as an entrepreneur at large?
So I think one of the first things I realized the strength was in my job made me a researcher of sorts. Because in writing strategy, you have to back it up, right? So I had a lot of tools at my disposal from my degree where there was media research tools that I learned in varsity. And then going into the corporate world, the likes of Unilever, who thrive on making sure that we can back up our gut instinct, is try and back up your gut instinct. And I don't doubt for a second that anyone who goes into a space is because of a knowing. But until you can back it up with either finding a group of people who you can ask questions that are not leading and get them to give you that answer to prove that what you're saying links up. Yes. So research is quite important. I would say research it to death rather than not at all. The other thing that I learned was that you need to be able to pivot. What I thought Gugu Intimates was on the 21st of Jan 2016, when I first pulled up my laptop and I go, cool, I'm gonna start putting this down on paper, to what it is today is chalk and cheese. Also in that, for the most part, it far exceeds my expectations because I was willing to see the problems as I've come too far to give up now. I've learned how to pivot as opposed to give up. And then the other one is to just pull your tribe around you as tightly as you can. Not even Richard Branson is everything in Virgin. You've got to find people that you can trust. And there are many ways in which you can do that. Some of the basic ones are just get an NDA, get a legal team. First thing you should get is an accountant and a lawyer, first of all. But get someone who can help you protect your idea, but find the people who, in their area of expertise, would add something that would take you 4 years of a degree to go and learn. So I'm not an accountant. I'm not a CA. I am not a designer. I don't cut materials myself. I don't sketch all the stuff myself, but what I've learned is if I were to stop and say I'm going to go learn all of this, Gugu Intimates would launch in 2022.
You plug into people who are experts in their field, and that's how you become better as well. What are the short and long-term goals for Gugu Intimates?
Geez, our short-term goals is one, to showcase the product need in a more visual way. So what I'm having fun with is I've created the job of my dreams. I often joke that CEO for me is actually Creative Excellence Officer for Gugu Intimates because it is the communication of what it is you're selling that actually gets people to buy. Yeah. But I'm also executive in that I have to know and learn incrementally all the other aspects that affect my business. So we are going to be rolling out a lot more user content, people who've bought, people who've experienced the brand that have been giving us feedback, to show you and give you a lot more confidence that it's a good quality product and the need is there. We want to start expanding into more sizes and more shades. Okay. Which we can talk a little bit more about. So we've started with sizes 32A to 38D because underwear research in the country was not readily available without me having to tell my idea to an underwear manufacturer, which scared me to death. So I did a lot of my own research. But now that we've been in market, we get a lot of feedback every single day, whether in comments, emails, our subscription script. where women are telling us what sizes we need to go into so that we can better develop a prototype that is comfortable, that is sexy. Because you know the feedback that as the sizes get bigger,
yeah,
it gets a little bit.
And also some people are mismatched, so their bottoms are smaller than the top. So it's about mixing and matching, you know, so people can actually find the fit for them.
Exactly. So people can find more of a top fit for them because the African physique is very different to most in the world. Third thing that I am excited about is starting to develop capability to manufacture in Africa. As an original idea and custom coloring the materials, that technology was not readily available. So to make this a really proudly African brand where we bring in the one last puzzle piece, which is the actual manufacturing and assembling of the underwear, bring it back into the continent. I'm not going to be precious about just South Africa. I think the borders for me are imaginary. We need to try and get the volumes up so that it can still remain an affordable luxury. It is a premium brand, but it can't break the bank while it's at it. So there's a lot on my plate, but because it all has its place, I kind of bucket the time to make sure that we get it done.
Gugu, thank you for chatting to us today. We wish you all the best with your future endeavors and keep reaching for the stars.
Thank you.
Success is the sum of small efforts repeated day in and out, and I've certainly taken a lot from this experience. Now that is all from myself, Liesl Wilson, and the rest of the Face in the Crowd team. Until next time, keep pushing beyond your limits.